I was raised in America's heartland. When I was 2 years old, my sister suffered a profound brain injury at birth. She was diagnosed with the most severe case of cerebral palsy anyone in my community had ever seen. The experts gave her a year to live. My family was devastated. When she turned 2 years old, the experts advised my parents that she wouldn't live past 5. It seemed that the heartland didn't have a big heart for the disabled. My parents had to fight for my sister's future. From the moment she came home from the hospital, my parents battled state and local bureaucracies to demand due process, access to health care, humane treatment for my sister. My parents did what many would do in a similar situation. They became activists. They organized other families with disabled children to advocate for new laws, better funding, broader social acceptance for the disabled. Despite the experts and the bureaucrats, my little sister Caroline she turned 45 this year. For the record, she rocks. This story is part of me. It shaped the way I see the world. But it's not unique. Many of you have similar stories. This story of my childhood taught me to believe that the future can be shaped. Like most of what I learned in my childhood, I did not truly understand this lesson until I was an adult. It was in graduate school when I had the 1-2 punch of learning something new from an old memory. I was studying a set of case studies that were about how policies can shape the future. And then the insights came crashing down from my childhood memories. The first punch had me saying, oh yeah, the future, it's so obvious, it can be shaped. My parents showed me that. And then came the second punch. If it's so obvious, why don't we do it? I've yet to find a successful and satisfying answer to this question. But this is where my work in futures research began. For the last 20 years, I have spent researching and exploring hundreds of possible futures for foundations, universities, governments, nonprofits, and individuals. Today, I'd like to share some things I've learned about the future. The first thing I discovered is that the future cannot be observed. Turns out that the future doesn't exist. It's a concept. And as a researcher, I know that you cannot collect data on something that doesn't exist. However, what do exist and can be studied are people's perceptions of the future. Under the right circumstances, these perceptions can be collected and studied. That's what I do. I study how and what people think about the future. I study people's ideas about the future. Another thing I learned is that there are relatively few ways to think about the future. Like the past, the future is a construct in our mind. Thought is required to access the past and the future. We reflect on the past and we project into the future. There are a million ways to think about the past. We have blogs, diaries, cable news, books, poems, songs, the History Channel. All of these help us think about and process what has happened. Beyond science fiction, forecasts, and of course the magic 8-ball, there are relatively fewer ways to think about and process what will happen, what can happen. Seems that we'd rather reflect than project. One way to think about the future is visioning. Those who want to invent better conditions, those who want to invent better futures, need a way to focus on and achieve the conditions they want. They need a vision. A vision is a framework, a mental GPS system that guides us to better future conditions. It's what you need to be intentional. Without a vision, there's nothing to be intentional about. I can tell you this, with or without a vision, your future is on its way. And having a vision can give you some control. My parents' vision for my sister allowed them to be intentional and effective in shaping not only her future, but my family's future. Visions are built using ideas about the future. The better the ideas, the better the vision. So there's good reason to focus on how you think about the future. After all, that's where your ideas about the future will come from. So ask yourself, how do you think about the future? Not what do you think about the future. How? How do you do it? And for extra credit, solve for why. Why do you think about the future? Or why not? Why wouldn't you think about the future? Not everyone is good at thinking about the future. This is something I've noticed over time. And clearly, I'm not the only one to have noticed. A team of behavioral researchers in 2007 showed that the decisions we make for our future selves are more similar to the decisions we make for other people and significantly different than the decisions we make for ourselves right now. What this means is that we are more concerned about who we are right now than who we will be in the future. This is called temporal discounting. We discount the future. We tend not to think about the needs, wants, and values of the people we will become, well, because that's not who we are right now. Another team of researchers built on this study, this time using MRI technologies, to study activities in the brain. What they discovered is that our connection with our future self weakens as the time horizon increases. Further out, less connection. This is called self-continuity. The further into the future we envision, the more likely we will see ourselves and think about ourselves, our future selves, as someone else. Why does this matter? I think it's rather straightforward. The decisions you make, the actions you take, have a direct impact on the conditions of your life and the options available to you in the future. My parents, the decisions they made, the actions they took from the first day of my sister's life led to a much better future for my sister than what the experts had in mind. In 2016, the Institute for the Future conducted a survey with 2,800 U.S. adults. The survey results suggest that more than 60% of the people we live and work with do not regularly think about their lives 5 years out. Many of us make important decisions and take consequential actions every day with little or no consideration of the foreseeable future. And when we do think about our future, we may not think about it as our own. Hopefully, it's only those who regularly think about the future who are making all the important decisions. Clearly, that is not the case. So many of the challenges we face with our environment, our economy, our culture, our government, our politics are due in large part to the lack of a coherent vision for the future. Think about the problems that we face as individuals, as a community, as a country, as inhabitants of planet Earth. How many of these problems seem preventable if we had made decisions using an effective, well-thought-out vision? To build better futures, we need better ways to build visions. So many of the problems that we face can easily be understood if we can perceive and appreciate the fact that we don't just live in our own futures. We live in a space where we share futures with other people. It would be very simple if each of us were just better at thinking about our own individual futures, where we could apply those insights to our own decisions and our own actions. Unfortunately, we're cast in a web of overlapping futures that we share with others. People at work, people at church, members of your family, your neighbors, people who share your favorite trail. You share a future with many different groups, and when any of those groups want to shape their future, they will probably develop and pursue a vision. What I have learned about vision-based change is that the best, most effective visions are aspirational, inclusive, responsive, and most importantly, shared. It seems to me that every organization, every school, every government should have a vision that inspires its members, that appeals to the needs and values of the people involved, and is broadly shared. Why don't we have that? To build better futures, we do need better ways to build visions. Problems like global climate change, the cycle of poverty, cultural divisiveness, structural inequities are real, and they demand our attention. While the seeds of these problems were planted long ago, the solutions can only be crafted in the future. And if we don't, won't, or can't connect with the future, these problems will never be solved. Oh, look, Houston floods in 1935. My parents committed to a vision that Caroline, my little sister, would not be institutionalized. That her rights as a community member will be respected, and she'll be treated with dignity. My parents created a shared vision within my community that included the disabled, that included people like my sister. Visioning works. It makes a difference. But it's not easy. That's why so many groups and organizations don't have an effective vision. It's hard. What if a group of people could easily access their ideas about the future they share together so they could make better decisions, build shared visions, take smarter actions? That's what I try to do. I help people think about their futures. I collect ideas about the futures through individual interviews where participants imagine a future that they desire and believe is possible. I ask participants to talk as if it's the future. I ask participants to play the role of their future self. The role playing is critical. It allows the participant to be innovative, creative, holistic. My job as an interviewer is to explore their imagined future, to understand what things have changed, how and why. I am looking for the aha moments when the interviewee is connected with their future self, when their temporal discounting is low and their self-continuity is strong. It is here where the interviewee is tapping the insights of the person they want to become. It is here where some of the best ideas about the future can be found. It's one thing to think about your future. It's another thing to spend quality time explaining your future to someone else in detail. The experience can be enlightening, if not transformative. Interviews result in a set of ideas about the future as described by people's future selves. Groups use these ideas as building blocks to build visions, draft plans, take better actions into the future. Let's try something. Let's try tapping your future selves. Okay? You ready? Imagine a future that you desire and you believe is possible. Now let's go 5 years into the future. It's 2022. You are 5 years older. Think about that. What do you look like? It's 2022. What's different? Think about how things have changed. Your phone is 5 years older. Your shoes are 5 years older. Everyone you know is 5 years older. Okay? Where do you live now? How do you spend your time? Oh, remember that problem that you were dealing with 5 years ago back in 2017? How did that work out? How did you do it? What's important to you now? If you can answer these types of questions with detail, honesty, and empathy, you are connecting with your future self. And that is an important place to start. We need visions. But not just individual visions. We need shared visions for the futures that we share with our friends, our families, our colleagues, our schools, our governments, our institutions, and more. We need tools that make it easier for everyone to access their future self, for everyone to have ideas about their future, for everyone to participate and pursue shared visions. It's easy to live in the past. It's tempting to live in the moment. But we must also try to connect with the person that we want to become in the future. My sister Caroline has proved to me that the future can be shaped. Because it can, I believe we must. Leaving it to chance, I think, is irresponsible. So I'll leave you with 3 questions. Please think about these questions. Answer them. Share them with your friends and family. What do you want your life to look like in 5 years? How will you have changed? And what will you have done? Thank you.